500 billion. That's not the GDP of a struggling nation. That's not the cost of a war. That's the bill one of the most advanced industrial countries on Earth handed to its own citizens. All in the name of saving the planet. And the most disturbing part? They knew it might not work. And they did it anyway. This is the story of the most ambitious energy experiment in modern history, and how it almost broke a nation. Let's go back to 2011. Germany is riding high. Its economy is the envy of Europe. Its engineering is world-class. Its cars, its factories, its precision manufacturing, all legendary. And then, on March 11th, a nuclear reactor in Fukushima, Japan, melts down after a catastrophic tsunami. Thousands of miles away, in Berlin, something shifts. Angela Merkel, a physicist by training, someone who understood nuclear energy better than almost any other world leader, goes on national television and makes a stunning announcement. Germany will shut down every single one of its nuclear power plants. All 17 of them. Gone. By 2022, the crowds roared. Green groups celebrated. It felt like a turning point for humanity. They called it Energiewende, the energy transition. The idea was bold, almost poetic. Take one of the world's great industrial powers and run it entirely on wind, sun, and water. No nuclear, no coal, no dependence on foreign gas. Just clean, green, German-engineered perfection. The world watched with genuine admiration. This was supposed to be the blueprint, the model every country would eventually follow. But here is where things start to get uncomfortable. See, energy systems aren't like apps. You can't just update them overnight. They run on physics. And physics doesn't care about your political timeline. Here's the problem with solar and wind that nobody in that 2011 press conference wanted to say out loud. The sun doesn't always shine. The wind doesn't always blow. I know. You've heard that before. It sounds almost too simple to matter. But follow this logic with me for a second, because the consequences are staggering. Germany's industrial heartland, the Ruhr Valley, the auto factories in Stuttgart, the chemical plants in Leverkusen, they need power constantly. Not when it's sunny, not when it's breezy over the North Sea, constantly. So what happens when the wind drops and it's a cloudy winter week in December? You need backup. Massive, reliable, always-on backup. And what did Germany have for backup once they started shutting down the nuclear plants? Coal and Russian gas. Let that sink in. Germany shut down its cleanest power sources, nuclear, and replaced the gap with its dirtiest ones, lignite coal, while simultaneously becoming more dependent on Vladimir Putin's pipeline. They didn't just build a green energy trap. They built it and handed someone else the key. Now let's talk about money. Because this is where the story stops being abstract and starts being personal. For every German family that opened their electricity bill, to fund Energiewende, Germany created something called the EEG surcharge, the Renewable Energy Sources Act levy. Every household, every business, every small shop owner paid it. It was baked into every electricity bill every month for over a decade. By 2013, German electricity prices were already among the highest in Europe. By 2022, the average German household was paying nearly 3 times what an American household pays per kilowatt hour. But the government had a response ready. It's an investment. It's the cost of the future. And look, I respect that argument. Transitions cost money. New infrastructure costs money. That's real. But here's where things took a dark turn. All that money, the subsidies, the surcharges, the grid investments totaled somewhere between $500 and 600 billion euros over roughly 2 decades, depending on how you account for it. Some analysts put the figure even higher when you include stranded asset costs and grid modernization. €500 billion spent. And what did Germany get for it? By 2000, renewables provided about 46% of Germany's electricity. Not energy, electricity is only about 20% of total energy consumption. Heat, transport, industrial processes, those still ran overwhelmingly on fossil fuels. So after spending more money on an energy transition than most countries spend on their entire defense budgets over a decade, Germany was still getting the majority of its total energy from fossil fuels. Most people assume the money bought a clean energy system. The reality was far more complicated. There's a word in German that energy engineers started using more and more as the transition progressed. Dunkelflaute. Dark doldrums. It describes those stretches, sometimes days, sometimes weeks, of cold, windless, sunless winter weather. The exact conditions when German demand for energy peaks. The exact conditions when German renewables produce almost nothing. In January 2017, Germany experienced a severe Dunkelflaute. Wind and solar dropped to producing less than 5% of the country's power needs for several consecutive days. The lights didn't go out. You know why? Because coal plants fired up at maximum capacity and gas flowed in from Russia. The backup system, the fossil fuel backstop, never actually went away. Germany was paying down at once. The nuclear plants, which could have been providing clean, domestically produced, Russia-independent power, were in various stages of being shut down. The last 3 were still technically operational, but the German government had already committed to closing them at the end of 2022. The debate that erupted was ferocious. Economists, engineers, and energy analysts came out publicly saying what many had been saying quietly for years. Keeping those nuclear plants open was the obvious, logical, immediate solution. The government's response? They briefly extended 2 of them, by a few months, as a reserve. And then, they shut them all down anyway. In April 2023, the last German nuclear plants went dark, in the middle of an energy crisis, with Russian gas cut off, in a country that had just spent €500 billion trying to go green. The German economy, Europe's largest, contracted in 2003. Industries started relocating. BASF, one of the world's largest chemical companies, headquartered in Germany for over 150 years, announced it was shifting investment to the United States and China because energy costs in Germany had become uncompetitive. This wasn't a small business closing. This was a symbol. When BASF starts packing bags, the world notices. Now, and this is important, I'm not here to tell you that green energy is a scam. It isn't. Denmark runs on wind power spectacularly. Norway runs on hydro. The technology is real, it's improving, and in the long arc of human history, transitioning away from fossil fuels is probably necessary and right. But Germany's specific execution of that transition contains lessons that are almost brutally clear in hindsight. The decision to shut down nuclear was driven more by public fear after Fukushima and decades of German anti-nuclear politics than by what the grid data actually showed. Energy transitions take generations, not election cycles. Germany tried to run a 50-year process in 10 years and paid an enormous price for the mismatch. Geopolitics and energy policy are inseparable. Building energy dependency on an authoritarian neighbor while simultaneously dismantling your most reliable domestic energy source wasn't just an energy mistake. It was a strategic one. And the people who pay for bold experiments are almost never the people who design them. German industrial workers, small business owners, and families on fixed incomes absorbed the highest electricity prices in Europe. The architects of Energiewende did not. Germany hasn't given up. To be clear about that, the country is still building offshore wind at a serious pace. It's investing heavily in green hydrogen. The idea of using renewable electricity to produce a fuel that can store and transport energy the way gas can. It's redesigning its grid. It's forming new energy partnerships with Norway for hydro, with the Gulf states for hydrogen exports. The new industrial strategy is slower, more pragmatic, less ideological. And here's something most people outside Germany don't fully appreciate. German engineering culture is extraordinary at solving hard problems. The country that built the Autobahn, pioneered chemical engineering, and put precision manufacturing on the map doesn't give up easily. But the lesson from the last 12 years isn't about Germany's resilience. It's about what happens when a society lets emotion overpower evidence in making irreversible infrastructure decisions. Because the thing about infrastructure, it's not like a law you can repeal. You can't unclose a nuclear plant overnight. You can't rebuild 40 years of expertise in a decade. The physical and human capital, once dismantled, takes a generation to rebuild. That is the true cost of the $500 billion mistake. Not just the money. The options that money and those decisions permanently closed off. Here's what I keep coming back to when I think about this story. Germany didn't fail because of bad intentions. The people who designed Energiewende genuinely wanted a better world. They wanted energy independence. They wanted clean air. They wanted their children to inherit a livable planet. Those are good reasons. But good reasons don't automatically produce good outcomes. And the gap between intention and outcome, in energy, in economics, in history, is where the most important lessons live. Right now, dozens of countries are standing where Germany stood in 2011, pen in hand, about to sign their own version of this plan. Some of them will get it right. Some of them will look back in 20 years the way Germany looks back now. At a transition that was real, necessary, and still mismanaged in ways that cost ordinary people billions. The question isn't whether to transition. That ship has sailed. The question is, Who pays, how fast, and what do you dismantle to get there? Because in energy, like in most things that actually matter, the details aren't boring fine print. The details are the whole story. If you made it this far, here's what I want you to know about this channel. We don't do hot takes. We don't chase headlines. What we do is take the biggest economic and historical events of the last century, the ones that still shape your world today, and we pull them apart until we understand why they really happened. Not the version you learned in school. The real version, with the numbers, the decisions, and the people behind them. If that's the kind of thinking you want more of, hit subscribe, not for me. Because the next time someone tells you a sweeping solution to a complex problem sounds too good to be true, you'll have the framework to ask the right questions. And that, genuinely, is worth more than any headline.